Today's service is an atheist-themed service written by Steve called Losing My Religion. Steve has asked us as a congregation to deliver the service, and these are his words. Steve got the idea for today's service after hearing about a growing non-religious movement called the Sunday Assembly. The Sunday Assembly is in reality just a church service for atheists and agnostics. They meet in a service style similar to a Christian church, but minus the religious elements. The movement started in 2013 in London to create a space where people who had left Christianity but missed the social and communal aspects of going to church could meet. Steve knows that some of the congregation members are agnostics or atheists. Others have perhaps once been Christians, but their religious journey and life experience have led them out of mainstream Christianity towards a more liberal church such as ours, or down a different spiritual path, which being a Unitarian enables, encourages, and supports. Steve describes himself as a spiritual person and doesn't follow any set religion. He is not opposed to religion, just religious extremism, which is not compatible with Western liberalism, as it wants to curtail the rights of other individuals that they don't agree with. Apparently, if you say to an atheist that you are a spiritual person, they will roll their eyes, as it is such a broad term. But we Unitarians have respect for all religions and all people, including those of little or no faith, of what is now termed nones. Not nuns, as in the term for a woman who vowed to dedicate her life to religious service, but nones, spelled N-O-N-E-S, as in no religion. The opening music, by the way, was from the 2014 film The Imitation Game and was composed by Alexandra Desplat. The film tells the story of atheist British mathematician and computer scientist Alan Turing, played in the movie by Benedict Cumberbatch. Turing is considered the father of theoretical computer science and worked for the Government Code and Cipher School, GCCS, breaking the code used by the German military to encode their radio communications during World War II. He played a crucial part in the Allied victory over Nazi Germany. He was also, sadly, a victim of mid-20th century attitudes to homosexuality. In 1952, Turing was prosecuted for gross indecency and accepted chemical castration as an alternative to jail. He died in 1954 from cyanide poisoning, which an inquest determined was suicide. Turing was granted a royal pardon in 2013 for his 1952 conviction. Can you imagine if you told him in 1952 that one day his portrait would be printed on the highest numbered banknote in Britain? And that is exactly what has happened. If you ever have a £50 note, which is probably unlikely, Turing will be the figure you see along with King Charles II. We start as usual with the lighting of our chalice. Normally we say it's a symbol of our free religious faith, but today we are going to be quite the rebels and say, as a symbol of not having any religious faith. Linda, would you light it, please? Thank you. Be careful you don't burn yourself. I can see, Jill, why you didn't want to do it. I'm not really sure. Yes. Yeah.
Oh no.
What is this saying to us, I wonder? Do you think it's all right?
Well, it's a lot. It's the match that's a light, so I'm going to try again.
Yeah, go on. Go on. Okay. Right, while Linda's lighting the chalice, can we sing well, actually, I'll talk about it first. Our first hymn is Green Book, number 233, and it's called Others Call It God. This is a hymn Steve first heard in one of Kate's last, if not last, service with us in December 2024. Steve says he vaguely remembers her saying it was a hymn she heard when she went to her first Unitarian service in Brighton and sparked her interest in Unitarianism and becoming a minister. So it's Green Book number 233, Others Call It God, and stand if you're able. So Steve's service is in 3 parts. So this is the first part. The first part of our service is a summary of atheist history, a sort of timeline of events, so to speak. Atheism is a lack of belief in a deity, God, or the supernatural. Atheists rely on reason, scientific evidence, and philosophical inquiry as the basis for their worldview. Atheism is not a modern movement and has existed since ancient civilizations. Skepticism towards the existence of a god can be found in the writers of philosophers dating back to ancient Greece. It was a Greek philosopher, Anaxagoras, excuse my pronunciation, one of the first known atheists, who said that everything has a natural explanation. The moon is not a god, but a great rock, and the sun is a hot rock. Atheism did not take shape, however, until much later on in history, though. Matthias Knudsen, who lived from 1646 to around 1674, was a German critic of religion. He is considered the first atheist known by name and in person. The period we now call the Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries marked a significant turning point and led to increased scrutiny of religious beliefs. The most famous conflict between religion and science was probably the 1633 trial of Galileo Galilei by the Roman Catholic Inquisition. A prominent scientist and astronomer, he proposed a heliocentric model of the universe rather than the geocentric view of the Church. His opinions contradicted accepted biblical interpretations, and the Church sentenced him on charges of heresy to house arrest, where he remained until his death in 1642. In the age of science, religion is often seen as harmful superstition, and most scientists identify quite openly as atheists. Science is skeptical of religion because it is based on faith rather than empirical evidence. In 1789 came the French Revolution, which saw the birth of a republic and the de-Christianization of France. The Church, which was seen as a tool of the ruling classes, was suppressed, clergy exiled or killed, and in 1793, the Christian calendar was replaced by one starting from the date of the revolution. It set an example for future revolutions, including the Russian Revolution of 1917. It was a bit like Year Zero, imposed by the communist Khmer Rouge in 1975 Cambodia. That religious dogma was incompatible with science was solidified in the 19th century with the theory of evolution, and they have never reconciled. It would be an understatement to say that Charles Darwin and his 1850 publication on the origin of the species set the atheist cat amongst the religious pigeons. Evolution was a direct contradiction to the biblical creation story in Genesis, and that life has developed due to natural processes rather than as the creation of a loving God. Darwin was ridiculed and lampooned as heretical, and his theory is disputed even today, particularly amongst evangelical Christians. Think of the 1925 Scopes trial, where a high school teacher was accused of violating the Butler Act, a Tennessee state law which outlawed the teaching of human evolution in American public schools. And then there is the intelligent design, formulated in the 1990s, which disputes the theory of evolution and is mainly taught in America. The 19th century also saw the rise of prominent figures who shaped the atheist movement, primarily Karl Marx, who described religion as the opiate of the people and served as a distraction from the struggles faced by the working class. They were told to accept their lot and that a great glorious reward awaited them in heaven. Religion encouraged passivity and to accept authority, control, and the status quo. The Russian Revolution of 1917 overthrew the Tsarist regime of the Romanovs and led to the establishment of a communist government opposed to the Orthodox Church. The Church was a source of authority and legitimacy for the Tsar. The communists saw the Church as an enemy and sought to diminish its influence. They seized church property and curtailed religious education and training of clergy. They promoted atheism as the new state religion, although many practiced their faith in secrecy. The 15 socialist republics, which became the USSR or Soviet Union, the majority of Eastern Europe, Cuba, and several Asian countries such as China followed suit. Albania was the first country to constitutionally and formally declare itself an atheist state in 1967. There are 5 remaining communist states: China, Cuba, Laos, the Democratic Republic of Korea or North Korea, and Vietnam. All are non-religious countries, although some citizens worship in private or in secret. Revolutions often suppress religion and religious institutions, as they hold God as a higher authority than the state, which is a no-no in their eyes. The state is top God, not God. Top dog, not God. There is a conflict of interest, a power struggle. Loyalty to the state is paramount, not religion. This is why the Nazis regarded Jehovah's Witnesses as enemies of the regime, as they refused to take an oath of loyalty to Hitler. This is also why they are considered an extremist group in Putin's Russia, as Jehovah's Witnesses refuse to salute the flag, participate in politics, or serve in the military. The Catholic Church was terrified of communism and its atheist creed. Had America not intervened with the Marshall Plan post-World War II and provided economic aid to Western Europe to rebuild our war-torn economies, then all of Europe would have come under Soviet influence and Catholicism in Europe would have been curtailed, even destroyed. Pius XII was a wartime pope, and he is a controversial one due to his silence on the fate of Europe's Jews during the Holocaust. He was terrified of communism, seeing what it had done in Russia, and in 1950 issued an encyclical, Anni Sacri, on a program combating atheism. The Cold War between 1945 to 1990 was a clash of cultures, and many Americans saw themselves as part of a religious battle against godless communist atheists. Look at the Joseph McCarthy communist witch hunts between 1945 to 1954. And then Ronald Reagan, propelled to power by the religious right or the moral majority in the 1980s. In 1983, Reagan, in a speech to the National Association of Evangelicals, called the Soviet Union an evil empire and the focus of evil in our modern world. In Russia, a complete atheist U-turn has occurred. The Russian Orthodox Church has seen a resurgence following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It has now become entwined with a national Russian identity, with many Russians embracing the Church as a pillar of their cultural heritage. The Russian Orthodox Church, led by Patriarch Kirill and President Vladimir Putin, are bedfellows and support Putin's political agenda. Their condemnation of Western values, liberalism, and perceived decadence has gained legions of fans across Russia and beyond. Amazingly, the Russian Orthodox Church is gaining a foothold in America with its anti-woke, anti-feminist, anti-LGBT agenda and promotion of traditional family values and unapologetic extreme masculinity. It's also one of the reasons many evangelical American Christians are more supportive of Putin than Ukraine, and have urged President Trump to cease providing financial and military aid to Ukraine. Another former atheist country, communist country, Poland, embraced its former Catholic roots after 1989, mainly due to former Pope John Paul II, who was from Poland and one of the key figures in the fall of communism, or what is sometimes called the Autumn of Nations. It is now one of the most religious countries in Europe. The new atheism movement gained momentum in early 2000s, with Richard Dawkins, author of The God Delusion, emerging as one of its key voices. But it is globalization and the internet that has fostered the growth of the nones in the last 25 years. The internet has become a platform for debate, discussion, solidarity, connection, and advocacy for nones across the world, including countries where it is difficult and even openly dangerous to be an atheist. Some countries have criminalized atheism. Declaring oneself an atheist is illegal and considered apostasy. It can lead to serious consequences, including the death penalty in countries such as Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan. This often means many atheist Muslims remain what are termed closet atheists, faking belief in a deity for social acceptance within a community. Such is the fear that it is said there are only two places for an atheist Muslim, and that is either in the closet or in the grave. We'll now have our second hymn, which is number 216 in the Green Book, Wide Green World.
For
Steve said he knew that was more of an eco hymn, but he chose it for two reasons. The first is the growing anti-green movement or rejection of environmentalism within Christian fundamentalist circles. The second is one of the key themes in atheism, is a focus on the natural world and exploring its wonders as an alternative to religious explanations. We now have a short prayer which Steve used his AI to create. In this moment of reflection, we gather our hearts and minds, embracing the wonder of existence and the beauty of our shared journey. May we find strength in our connections, drawing inspiration from the kindness and love that surrounds us. Let us cherish the mysteries of life, celebrating the resilience of the human spirit and the light of reasoning that guides us. With gratitude for the experiences which shape us, we look towards the future with hope and a commitment to compassion. Together, we honour our shared humanity. With respect and intention, we close this moment of connection. And as this is an atheist prayer, we do not say there is no Amen. We do not say Amen. And Sheila is now going to read a poem, and she will read part 2 of the service. Oh, you're there. Sorry, I thought you were still at the back.
This is a poem called Life Without Gods, by Sikandar Kumar Mehta. In a world without gods or fate, we make our own destiny. With every choice and every step, we shape our lives, our legacy. No higher power to guide us, no holy book to show the way. We trust in reason, science, to lead us through each day. We find beauty in the natural, the stars above, the oceans wide. We find wonder in the mysteries of science yet to be tried. We live for love and laughter, for family and for friends. We strive for peace and progress until our journey ends. In the end, we are but dust, but our impact will linger on in the hearts and minds of those whose lives we've touched upon. No heaven or hell awaits us, no judgment day to fear. We live and love and learn in this one precious year. And as Anne said, I've been invited, and it's my privilege to deliver the second part of this service, which is called I Once Wanted to Become an Atheist, but I Gave Up as They Have No Holidays. This is not exactly true. There is the National Day of Reason on the first Thursday in May, which is popular with atheists and secular individuals. There is also Atheist Day on March the 23rd and Atheist Pride Day on June the 6th, where those in the atheist closet traditionally come out as non-religious, sometimes by announcing their atheism on their social media platforms. You don't have to be religious to enjoy celebrations like St. Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, the 4 seasonal points, the solstices and the equinoxes, Halloween, Thanksgiving, even Christmas. You can focus on the community traditions, meeting up with friends and family, buying gifts and spoiling the younger members of your clan. There is also Newton Mass, which you can celebrate on December the 25th if you really object to Christmas. It's a secular alternative, celebrating the December the 25th birthday of Isaac Newton, a key figure in the scientific revolution and Enlightenment. So, what do atheists focus on? A life well lived, focusing on this, their only life. An exploration of death as the end. There is no afterlife. A rejection of all things supernatural, a focus on the natural world, humanism and ethics, rights and personal freedom. This is why so many humanist causes come into conflict with religion, such as LGBTQ+, or reproductive rights, as the biblical text condemn them. It's another reason religion condemns atheists as immoral. There is no official atheist Bible or holy text, so to speak, unless you count Richard Dawkins, author of the atheist bestseller, The God Delusion, of course. There is plenty of reading material, though. Just type into any search engine and you will have a limitless choice to choose from. I suppose Dawkins can be considered the high priest of atheism. If you ever hear him speak, he really oozes contempt for anyone who is a believer. Steve sometimes thinks if he wasn't so contemptuous, Dawkins might get more converts to atheism. I guess you could call him an atheist fundamentalist. In some countries, being an atheist can lead to social ostracism or even persecution. America, for example, is extremely anti-atheist and distrusting of atheists, despite having a constitution which separates church and state. They are one of the most disliked groups in America, and it's doubtful any atheist would ever get into the White House as president. It would be political suicide, a bit like an MP being outed as gay in the 1980s. It meant career death. The founder of American Atheists was called Madeleine Murray O'Hair. She led the organisation between 1963 until 1986, and she was branded the most hated woman in America by Life magazine in 1964. There is a perceived link between atheism and lack of morals. You can't be a good person if you don't believe in God, which is complete nonsense. Secular morality is one not based on religious or supernatural revelation, but reason, logic, and empathy. Morality does not need a divine origin, and just because someone is religious does not mean they are a good person. Steve says he has met some vile people in other more traditional churches, including a minister he really disliked. I can see him beaming at me. His encounter with other churches is one of the reasons he left Christianity and joined our church. This church accepts you for who you are and on your terms. Other churches will often not accept you for who you genuinely are, or will, but on their terms. We're now going to hear from the high priest of atheism himself in a short 2-minute video called All Aboard the Atheist Bus Campaign.
This campaign started as a counter-response to adverts which were running on London buses in June 2008, which had Bible quotes on them, for instance, Jesus died for your sins, and then a URL of a website. And when you visited the website, it said that, among other things, that all non-Christians would burn in hell for all eternity in a lake of fire. And I thought that that was really quite strong, and that in 2008, these ideas shouldn't be being spread from the side of a bus. So I thought, why not put a really positive statement out there to say essentially the opposite. I think it's achieved far more than I ever hoped for, really.
I know that you think probably on our bus slogan is a bit soft. On the other hand, I rather like its upbeatness.
I agree with you.
Let everybody
I come
think
round
for
to it.
themselves.
I
come
agree.
round to it.
It's funny, and it gets people to talk about it. And if we'd said there's definitely no God, you can't say that. You can't say there's definitely no Father Christmas, and so it gets people to think.
You and I get accused a lot of being real haters of religion.
Yeah, we're strident and shrill and things. Isn't it amazing that if you say the mildest thing against religion, it's automatically strident? Have you ever noticed that?
Strident, it's offensive. People are outraged and offended. And I think what's good about this campaign is that nobody could call it offensive.
No.
They
will.
I get offended when they accuse us of being soulless, spiritless,
So do I.
Emotionless, dry rationalists, and brutal haters.
Yes.
I'm very offended, but on the other hand, I don't expect them to respect my offence. I expect my...
you stand up for yourself.
Stand up for myself.
Exactly, yes.
Why can't they? Why do they need special...
Because they've got nothing really to stand up for. They've got nothing, they've got no decent arguments, so they have to take offence. It's the only weapon they've got.
So following that, we come to a time of silence, followed by some music for your personal reflection. The music is the orchestral version of the John Lennon song Imagine. It is one of the greatest pop anthems of the 20th century, and one of Steve's former work colleagues had it played at his funeral, which had no religious content. He was called Richard, but everyone called him Jello. Why he was called Jello, we never knew, but Jello was kind and loving, always smiling, and without a bad bone in his body. He loved to travel and visited some amazing places in his life, including Southeast Asia, when that terrible tsunami hit in 2004. His parents thought he had been killed in the tsunami as they lost contact with him, but he was fine. Jello died in 2022 at the age of 48 after a short illness. Every time Steve hears this song, he thinks of him. A song can become ingrained with a memory, good or bad. Steve says he isn't sure if Jello had any religious beliefs, but would like to dedicate this service to him anyway, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind. This song calls on humanity to love as one, in peace, and has become a secular anthem. Humans without reliance upon anything supernatural can create a better, humane world. Since being released in 1971, it's sold millions of copies, and it went to number 1 in the US and the UK pop charts. I remember it well. Hilariously, one of the candidates for the 2025 papacy, the Filipino Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who is a karaoke fan, went viral on TikTok after footage emerged of him singing this song in 2019. This atheist anthem came back to haunt him with a vengeance, and was perhaps one of the reasons he did not get elected as the Pope. We will never know. But here follows this lovely piece of music, and if you feel you'd like to sing along, the words do appear on the screen.
The final part of our service talks about individuals who lost their religious beliefs. They are now agnostic, even atheists, but previously held strong, even evangelical beliefs prior to leaving religion. For some, it was personal tragedy that destroyed their religious beliefs. Alan Turing, who we talked about earlier in the service, renounced his faith in 1930 after his friend Christopher Morcom died suddenly from tuberculosis. Steve once watched a 1985 Nazi Holocaust documentary called Shoah, which is a mind-boggling 9.5 hours long. It interviews survivors, perpetrators, and witnesses to the event. He has always remembered one survivor who, interviewed in Israel, explained how he had abandoned Judaism and was now an atheist. This is a common theme amongst Holocaust survivors. How could God have permitted such a tragedy? Tragedy challenges traditional notions of faith and divine justice. There is even a 2008 film called God on Trial, based on the true story of how during World War II, a group of Jewish prisoners in Auschwitz passed judgment on God for abandoning them. And someone ask someone why they don't believe in God, and they will likely say the following to you. How could a loving, benevolent God allow such suffering in the world? A just world would reward good and punish evil, but this does not appear to be the world we live in. When bad things happen to good people, or when we see the wicked flourish and go unpunished, we feel like God hasn't held up his side of the bargain. It is a subject which has perplexed the greatest minds for centuries, and it is a question that never will be answered. Some responses to this question include one from a Hasidic master who said that a God who limits himself to actions that we humans can understand couldn't possibly be God. Another one is trying to explain God to man is like trying to explain to an ant how a TV works. Think of the book of Job in the Old Testament. His wife turns to him and says, "Do you still persist in your integrity? Curse God and die." That biblical story is as close as you can get to the example of man abandoning God due to personal tragedy. God responds to Job in chapter 38, verse 4. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" It is a book that states God's wisdom and justice are beyond our assumptions, about fairness beyond our reasoning. Steve's father died in 2019 and had a humanist funeral. He held no religious beliefs. His mother is not a fan either, but whenever Steve visited them in Edinburgh, he used to go to a small local Church of Scotland near their house, as he liked the minister there. She was called the Reverend Louise Duncan, and was one of the best ministers Steve has ever met or listened to. She radiated kindness and was genuinely loved by the church and wider community. He used to give her a chocolate bar every visit to the church, just as a simple act of kindness. Reverend Louise was health conscious and ran marathons for charity, but at the age of around 40, she was diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer, which within about 6 months confined her to a wheelchair and eventually killed her. She had a husband and a son. I think the son was about 7 when she got the cancer diagnosis. Steve remembers bumping into her prior to her cancer diagnosis, near to his parents' home as she was walking her dog with her son and chatting with her, and how happy she seemed. Reverend Louise took part and led services in the church up to the day she was transferred to a Marie Curie hospice in Edinburgh, where she died shortly afterwards. Steve says he thinks about her a lot, even though she has now been dead for 10 years. In those 10 years, he has seen family members and work colleagues die as well. But Reverend Louise's death is one that really sticks with him. He thinks it's because she was cheated by life, yet never lost her faith in God. And that really made an impact on him. She didn't curse God and die. Anyone who dies young is cheated. It's why we rage when this happens to someone we know. It really is one of the greatest injustices in the world. It's also a reason we should never complain about our age and getting old, as so many people don't get the chance. Steve often wonders what impact her death had on the faith journey of the congregation, her family, especially her husband and son. They were all devout Christians. Did they rage at God like Job's wife? I am sure they all prayed fervently for her physical healing, which never materialized. Steve's mother said that no minister has managed to fill the void left since Reverend Louise died, and the minister that took over the church didn't last long. Her shoes were simply too big to fill. Others leave religion as their faith journey evolves. Mainstream Christianity is just not working for them. Perhaps they have changed. People do. None of us are the same people who we were 10 years ago. I can even see this in countries. Look at the Republic of Ireland, up to recently one of the most die-hard Catholic countries, where the church dominated a very large part of Irish life. In fact, every part of Irish life. Many young Irish abandoned Catholicism as a result of the devastating sex abuse scandals and growing liberalism, which is incompatible with the church's stance on gay rights, reproductive freedom, priestly celibacy, and rejection of women priests. Ireland became the first country in the world in 2015 to legalise same-sex marriage in a historic referendum. Over 62% voted in favour of amending the country's constitution to allow gay and lesbian couples to marry. This was an overwhelming majority of the population and would have been unheard of or unimaginable in Ireland years ago. It was literally a slap in the face of the Irish Catholic Church, a protest vote. Ireland even voted in an openly gay Irish Prime Minister in 2017, Leo Varadkar. It's very hard to pronounce. This is another reason many countries are abandoning religion, as many religions, including most Christian dominations, are no longer in sync with society, especially more Western liberal countries. It is also the reason that Christian denominations, including the Church of England, are splintering, as congregations in more conservative regions, such as Africa, don't see eye to eye with more liberal Western congregations. Do you remember Jonathan Edwards, the British former triple jumper? He is widely regarded as the greatest triple jumper in history. He was a devout Christian, the son of a vicar. He even refused at one stage in his career to compete on Sundays. Edwards presented songs of praise up to 2007, but his religious journey led him out of Christianity, and he now calls himself agnostic, practically an atheist. I wonder what impact Edward losing his religion had on his relationship with his family, especially his father. Then there is Dan Barker, who helped found the Freedom from Religion Foundation in the USA. He was an evangelist preacher from a young age, but he said he just outgrew his faith. Steve watches his YouTube channel as well as an atheist podcast called Thank God I'm an Atheist, hosted by 2 ex-Mormon missionaries. The biggest fear of American atheists appears to be the ever-growing power of Christian nationalism, their impact on non-believers in the USA, and the reversal of both women's reproductive and LGBTQ plus rights. There is also an organisation in the USA called the Clergy Project. They provide support to clergy who no longer believe in God and want out of their vocation or religious careers. This is across the whole religious spectrum, not just Christianity. The Clergy Project offers support, advice, even career transition assistance, including career coaching grants. It's not quite as simple as saying to someone, just walk away. If you don't like your job, look for another one. The longer you are in a job, the harder it is to move to another one, as you become institutionalized and fear change. Those in religious vocations can lose everything. Look at Catholic priests, for example. They get a stipend instead of a salary, but also free board, clothing, expenses, cook, even a housekeeper. Think of Mrs. Doyle and Father Ted. Church of England clergy get free housing as well, and I think their council tax paid. Imagine losing your job and home in one, and the impact if you had a family to support. Also, many who leave a clerical role due to losing their faith can end up being ostracized from their former congregations. They are, to all intents and purposes, completely abandoned. Statistically, there will be clergy who have become agnostic or atheist continuing to work in their respective religious vocations out of fear of losing their livelihood and home. They would just be going through the motions, maybe the older ones, hoping to coast the final working years to retirement. In 2023, the Catholic Church reported 406,996 priests worldwide. Even if 1% had lost their faith, that is over 4,000 individuals. Others do bravely leave or come out of the atheist closet, like Margaret Ann Greta Vosper, an ordained minister with the United Church of Canada, a mainstream Protestant denomination. She came out as an atheist after the 2016 Charlie Hebdo shooting in Paris. She stated that belief in a supernatural God promoted hatred, and this led to the church instituting a formal review as to whether she was suitable to remain with them as a minister. In 2018, they came to an agreement with her that she was free to remain with them in the role of minister, but I'm sure some of the congregation would be uncomfortable with her atheist status. It would be a bit like attending an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting with a drunk speaker preaching abstinence. Would we mind as a congregation that our next minister is an atheist? Now that's a question. Steve said he wouldn't. He wasn't sure what Kate's religious beliefs were, and she was the only minister that he knew here. And finally, some people, instead of losing their religion altogether, embrace a different spiritual path, even mixing religions. Perhaps religious dilution would be the term. Steve Googled the internet to see if there was a term. And can you believe it? There is. It is called, believe it or not, trans-religious. It means to adopt a broader religious identity beyond calling yourself a specific religion, such as a Christian. Basically, seeing yourself as a global religious citizen. Hybrid religion? Perhaps. Universal Unitarianism, the Baha'i faith, celebrity influence would fit the trans-religious criteria, perhaps. Think of the swinging 1960s when the Beatles embraced Eastern spiritualism and made it very fashionable among the young. Or the Jewish mysticism craze, Kabbalah, several years ago, with legions of fans following pop icons Madonna, Britney Spears, and actress Demi Moore. So I think there's a lot to think about in Steve's service. And I think your minds will be going over it for more than today. So our final hymn is number 11. In the purple hymn book, it will be on the screen, and it's Blessed Spirit of My Life. We have two lots of closing words. The first one Steve found on Twitter, and he refuses to call it X. And it's just a sentence, well, not just a sentence. Nothing makes atheism more attractive than American Christianity. The second is a poem written by a Coventry Catholic priest who left a church as he could no longer stand the congregation. Oh, I hope that doesn't happen to us. He said it was a parting gift to them. It went viral on the web and is called Not I, Lord, Surely. Gossip flows from holy lips, a mix of disgruntled, unlikable, entitled, offended, who don't want to know. Better than you, holier too, tutting for a living, whispering about you know who. What makes people not come to church? Could it be the people who already go? The righteous, the cliquey, the worthy, the disdainful look given, the thought of, you're in my seat. The unfriendly, so that a stranger remains always so. Yes, Steve says this poem really made him laugh, as he's been to a church that it could have been written for. And I think maybe we've all been to churches like that. And hopefully ours will never become like that. So thank you for listening. And you know, obviously Steve spent a lot of time writing that service. So we'll extinguish the chalice. There you go.